Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for talking with us. I want to start with the Lincoln choice. I think it's such an interesting choice because it's not Lincoln the president, it's a representation of Lincoln. So, can you talk a little bit about that choice and why representation is such a key word in this book?
Yeah. First of all, thanks. It's nice to be here. The Lincoln is a really interesting figure here in the United States because we're not great with our history. We don't know our history very well, but Lincoln is someone that every American knows about and knows a lot of facts about, and he's become this sort of mythical figure for us. He's on our money, and there's cities named after him, and he's this very important figure. And so part of it is that we wanted to have a very recognizable person be the lead in our book, someone that people would immediately have feelings about and know something about. But our book is also set in the future, where humanity has gone extinct and robots have taken over the world. And so we have the animatronic Abraham Lincoln he's from a theme park, and uh he he looks like Lincoln and he talks like Lincoln, but he knows he's not quite Lincoln. And I think that is such a big part of what we loved about the idea of putting this character in the book, that it's not just a robot, it's a robot that is attached to humanity and is connected to humanity and has all these traits of the real Lincoln. He's very smart, he's very empathetic, he's very troubled. He worries a lot. He cares a lot about others. But he's also disconnected. He's a robot, and so he can never fully be human, but he doesn't fully feel like a robot. And that's a big part of the story, is being trapped between different worlds.
Yeah, even going with the title coming from one of Lincoln's famous speeches, this idea of enemy coming from within,
Yes.
such a such a weird time in America right now, where I think a lot of Americans are starting to grasp that notion once again. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you want the book to be in this political sphere right now? What do you want the book to like mean to people right now?
It's a funny thing because obviously when you put a president as the lead in your book, people are immediately thinking about his politics, and Lincoln was the president in the Civil War, so it's very, you know, in a country right now that's so deeply divided, and so people are so hostile to each other, and there's such a great political gap between the right and the left, and I think people expect the book to be very political in that way, but actually, I think a lot of what that speech, the Lincoln's Lyceum speech that we took the line from, the reason we like it and a lot of the things Lincoln stood for and talked about today would sound like political ideas, but sort of aren't political ideas. And that's the idea that caring about other people and having empathy and compassion and connecting to other people and recognizing that we're all connected and we're all a community and we all have to look out for each other. That's at the heart of what a lot of Lincoln did, and that speech in particular. And we live in a time where saying I care about people regardless of where they're from or what they believe. I care about people whether or not they were born in this country or they're a citizen of this country. I care about people, whether or not they're, from anywhere, from whatever country you're from, wherever you were born. Um, that right now in America is a political act, and so yes, that's the politics of our book, is that empathy and compassion and caring about humans is caring about your neighbors and caring about people you've never met is important. But I also would argue that it's not political. I would argue that that's basic humanity. That's just being a person. That's just being a decent person. And so that's obviously there's other political stuff in the book, but that's the main political theme that Lincoln was talking about, over 100 years ago, and we're still talking about today, and we're still having a problem with.
Yeah, I think in that idea, one thing that I love in the book is that the character basically starts almost being discarded as junk,
Yeah.
which I think is a good like it speaks what you're saying, like the basic idea of what Lincoln was saying is immediately getting almost thrown out. And I feel like this is a common thread on your book. So you kind of all of your main characters start being disregarded and then go on to like save the world, to have this big like roles in the story. So what do you think? Why these characters? Why underdogs picture you?
Um, I don't know. It's a really good question that no one's ever asked me. I do love that. I do love the idea of underdogs and people who are doubted. I mean, I think it comes from a lot of things. I think um I could talk about everything from the music I like being, I'm not a fan of the biggest bands in the world. I like, bands that play in basements, and I like comics, which is not as big as movies or TV or whatever. I've always sort of rooted for the underdog and always been attracted to that idea. But I think more than that, like I think that there's just something really wonderful about proving people wrong and believing in yourself and not letting people doubting you get in the way of your doing the things you want to do. I think we're faced constantly with negativity in this world and told you can't do that or that won't work. And all of the greatest things that ever happen are because people don't listen to that and power through it. And so I like telling stories about that.
Yeah, and I even feel like most of your lead characters, they have like this weird relationship with the hero journey because their arcs in the end, they are kind of defined by accepting the worst part of them and sometimes diving into that part and like
Yeah.
I think of four kids walking to a bank, how the book ends, and yeah, do you see it that way, like this inverted hero journey?
Yeah, I I don't think yes, I think Four Kids Walking to a Bank, We're Taking Everyone Down with Us has a similar thing. I think a lot about um in some ways I think about uh, subverting what the audience expects, and I think people expect a certain thing, and I sort of I get a lot of pleasure out of not giving people what they're expecting. But also I think there is this idea in a lot of stories that like once you start doing the right thing, that's it. Like that's all you need to do, and the rest is just good, and you're going to be good. And I don't think that's true in real life. I think that being good and helping people and being a positive force of change is it's constant work. You have to be vigilant. You have to work at it. And so I like to tell stories where characters try to do the right thing or set out to do the right thing, um, and then you find out that like eventually they're going to be selfish and they're not going to do that, and they're gonna end up doing it. So it is subverting the hero's journey because they're not. If anything, I'm telling cautionary tales that like just because someone sets out to be a hero doesn't mean they're going to be a hero at the end.
Yeah, again, comparing, we're taking everyone down with us. The robot aspect that is also present in this book. What you think is the common threads between those two books, and why people that love that book will love this new one?
Um, well, they both have robots in them, so that's a common thread. And I wrote both of them. The I don't know. Uh, I think I do a weird thing when I make a book. I spend a lot of time. I spend too much time thinking about it, and I think about it all the time. I wake up thinking about it. I dream about the books I'm working on, and that continues after I finish a book, where I realize that I still had more to say and I have more thoughts, and my thoughts have changed a lot sometimes. When you work on something for a year or 2 years, like you don't feel the same about it as you did when you started, and so in a lot of ways, If Destruction Be Our Lot is kind of a response to We're Taking Everyone Down with Us. Um, there's a lot of I think in the first issue, you kind of people won't see that exactly, but I think as it goes longer, they'll see that a lot of stuff about the relationship in We're Taking Her Down with Us. I'm thinking about it from a different point of view in a different way. I think Annalise and her father in that book and their relationship, if anything, without spoiling too much, if Destruction Be Our Lot is sort of if We're Taking Her Down with Us is from the point of view of a child in their relationship with their father, if Destruction Be Our Lot is maybe from the point of view of a father in the relationship with their child. But again, it's not a traditional thing. Uh, if you liked We're Taking Her Down with Us, I think we're trying to do a lot of the same stuff. We're trying to have a book that is funny and exciting, but also has a lot of emotional weight to it, is sad at times, and is about bigger things and bigger themes. But always we're trying to make it funny and exciting and weird. And so yeah, I think that's a connection, but they're very different books in a lot of ways too. So I hope people like both. I hope people who liked We're Taking It Down with Us give us a chance.
Yeah, my other favorite thing about this first issue is that you kind of make me fall in love with a bus. And this is my
Yeah,
favorite thing about comics because it's a medium that like you kind of fall in love with weird things. But
yeah,
as a writer as well, I'm curious, how do you find that voice? How do you find the comedy on that without being like too much? How's the
yeah.
process on that?
Yeah, it's hard. When we first started making the book, we had this idea that all of the robots who weren't Lincoln would all be sort of connected. They would all share a same like sort of computer processor. And we started the book that way and then realized that that would make every robot the same character. We basically just have Lincoln and one other character. The street light and the bus and the like giant robot who runs the city would all be the same. And that obviously for story reasons was not great. And so then we really decided to try and make every robot feel different and every robot unique. And so far, I mean, obviously not a lot of people have read the book because it's not out yet, but multiple people have been like, I really like the bus a lot. And yeah, I think it's that's the challenge is finding the voice for every character, no matter how big or small they are. Just being like, well, what do they want? What do they believe in? What do they hope for themselves? Like you just have to have a story. You have to know who the character is. And once you do that, it's very natural to have some of them be more likable because they're charming. And the bus is just trying to do its job and be helpful, and it's very sweet. And so I think people and we have a lot of robots throughout the book that are like that, and some that are not so sweet and some that are not so charming. But I think, for all of them, we know who they are and why they are the way they are, and what that means for how people will feel about them, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm happy I'm not the only one that told you about the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It would be great
you're
if I was like, that's weird that you like the bus.
you weirdo, get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're writing this one with your brother, which is a thing that I cannot imagine like working with my brother in that way. So was the process like? How you guys divided everything?
Sure, yeah. It's funny how many brothers have said to me, like, that's really crazy that you're writing with your brother. Me and my brother are very close. Um, he's a writer and a director. That's what he does for a living, but he's a writer for TV and film. So this is his first comic. Um, which is probably helpful for our relationship because he's older than me and he's smarter than me. So I have the one advantage of like, well, I know comics better than he does, and I've done this before. And so that sort of puts us on level playing field in terms of doing things. But it's been really great. He's one of the smartest storytellers I know, and so I'm constantly like learning from him. And thinking about things in ways I never have before, but also feel like I'm teaching him things too. And that's a nice feeling that it's not just one way. In terms of actually making the book, it's unusual because a lot of comics that are co-written, um, it doesn't mean that it's 50-50 on the work. It means, sometimes it's someone just had an idea, or sometimes someone just comes in and does the dialogue, or whatever it is. Like usually someone is doing much more of the work than someone else. That's not the case here. We actually Um, we get together and meet and talk about every issue and plan it and write an outline together in person. And then one of us like fills in the outline and does page breakdowns of what every page would be, and then we send it to the other person and they change that and send it back. And then one person writes all the panels and then sends it to the other person and they change them and rewrite them. And then we do that at every step, the dialogue and the lettering. So literally everything in the book has been touched by both of us. And I think it makes for an amazing experience for me because it's truly collaborative on every single part. But also, I think for the reader, you're going to get a book where me and my brother are very close, but we don't agree on a lot of stuff. We have we have very different ideas and very different taste. And so everything in the book that we don't agree on, we have to prove to the other like this is the right choice. If he has an idea and I have an idea, we argue about it and we fight about it until one of us is convinced. And that's not normal for the creative process. Normally, when you make something, it's, if you have a bad idea, no one's really going to tell you too much like that's a bad idea and it's just going to be out there. And every idea has been tested by us and had to be really fight to be in the book. And I think in the book, you'll feel like there's a lot of strange stuff and fun stuff and weird stuff and different stuff than you normally get in a comic. And that's partially due to the process of making it that we've had.
Cool. If I'm not mistaken, I think you both work in a comic shop before, right? Or you?
No, not, he didn't. I worked in a comic shop.
I'm very interested about that, of course, because like
Sure.
how that environment inspire work, what's important about comic shops?
Oh, sure. I worked in a comic shop here in New York City where I live. I I made the decision growing up. I've loved comics my whole life, but I didn't want to make comics. That was not a thing. I realized when I was a kid that I was bad at it, that I couldn't draw. I wanted to draw like Jim Lee or Todd McFarlane, and I couldn't, so I just stopped. But I still read comics. And I had a different career. I worked in the music business for a long time, and I wanted to change and do something different. And comics was the only thing I liked as much as music. And so I decided I wanted to make comics, but I really didn't know anything about trying to make comics. Um, and so I took a job at my local comic shop. I asked them if I could come and work, and they hired me. And I worked there for a couple years, and it was amazing it taught me so much from exposing me to stuff that I wouldn't normally be reading and looking at I used to sit in the back of the store at the new release wall and just watch customers to see what grabbed their eye as they looked at the wall, like what attracted people to a book and what, like there would be cool books that people wouldn't pick up, and then there'd be books that I thought weren't great that people would grab and look at, and sometimes they'd put them back. And so it was really interesting to study that stuff and try and figure out what what people liked and what people gravitated towards in making comics. But I also met a ton of my very good friends there and collaborators. Tyler Boss, who makes What's the First Place From Here and Four Kids Walking a Bank with me, worked there. We were coworkers. Vita Ayala, who wrote New Mutants and a bunch of stuff, and me and Vita are always slowly working on a project together. They worked there. So it was a great environment because there was a lot of people who wanted to make comics, and we were hanging out and talking about what we wanted. So, I learned a ton of other stuff. I learned about distribution and how a shop works, and that's really helpful when you make comics. It's really like, um, people always talk to me about the way I talk to comic shops because I understand buying a comic. I understand when a shop orders a comic, they pay for it. It's not the customer paying for it, it's the shop paying for it, and then the shop has to hope that the customer comes and buys it. And so I always approach shops and I say, I'm not going to ask you to take more books. Like you know how many books you can sell. I'm going to ask you, how can I help you sell the books you take? And that I think is all comes from working in a shop, from understanding the risk shops take and what it means and what you're asking a shop to do when you say like, can you carry my book? Can you promote my book? So all of that from the business side to the creative side, like I feel like I learned a lot. Yeah.
And even how do you make your book like stand out in such a crowded space? That idea, because we are taking everyone down with us. What I thought it was very interesting about that. It's kind of sold as a rook spy thriller, but then you
Yeah.
read the book, and the book is not about him, it's about his
Yeah.
startups. And I think it was a very interesting way to sell the book. Can you talk more about that idea?
Yeah. So, the part of that is the Stefano Landini, my partner on the book. He really wanted to make a spy book. He was like, let's make a spy comic. And I very quickly was like, I don't know that I'm the best writer for that. I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are. And I said, I'm willing to try, but like, let's make it a family story too. Let's make it about these things. And so the Rook idea came in very early that we were like, well, we have like an evil James Bond kind of figure in our book. And he wasn't the lead, but he's, this character that I thought people would like and find funny and interesting. And then as the more we talked about it, the more we were like, oh, that's a thing people will understand easily and it'll get them to pick up a book. If we're like, it feels like a James Bond. Like when you say James Bond to people, they go, oh, I know what that is. And then if they take a chance on it, they go, oh, this is different than what I thought. This isn't exactly a James Bond story, but it's sort of a James Bond type story. And I think that's something that I try to do a lot is give people something that they kind of understand and then be like, but this is different. So Four Kids Walk Into a Bank is a crime story and a bank robbery story, but different. It's about little kids, and We Can Never Go Home is a story about superpowers, but different. It's about like teens on the run. And in this book, in If Destruction Be Our Lot, like it's a post-apocalyptic story. It's the end of the world, um, but it's not like Mad Max or Fallout or any of those things. They're not people eating each other. It's not nothing like that. There's just robots, and so I like being able to go and give people an idea they think they understand, and then be like, but this is a version of that you don't understand.
Yeah, nice. I'm a big fan of What's the Furthest Place From Here, so I
Oh,
gotta
thanks.
ask you a question about that. The Alabama arc of her like assuming this Lafayette
Yeah.
identity, that really spoke to me. I think it's a very clever subversion of like this comic book hero trope of like assuming identities,
Hmm.
but like making it like really personal and about pain and about grief. Uh, was that something that relation with comics was something that you were thinking about when you wrote that? Can you talk about more about that arc? I really loved it.
Oh, thank you. I really love that arc too. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of in that book, and that's maybe my favorite thing I've ever written. So that it always means a lot when people like it. Yeah, the assuming Alabama assuming Lafayette's name and identity is um I don't think, when you said the superheroes and assuming identities and things, that's not something I'd ever really thought about. But when you said it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I probably like subconsciously, that's definitely a thing because you know, I spend my whole life thinking about secret identities, and that's my career is to work on stuff like that. But for me, I think a lot of it was thinking about um loss. I've had a bunch of people in my life while working on this book and before this book, I've lost a bunch of people, friends and family and stuff. And um I very much believe that when you lose someone you care about, that you carry them with you. Um that they live on inside you, and there's a piece of you that you have to dedicate to them or you lose them. And um in our story, what's the first place from here is a sad book at times and a hard book at times, and the kids of the academy are having a hard time. But I think the thing that I love about them is that they wholly love each other, that they are a family. And so to me, everything is family times 1,000. They're the most family you can have. They're this ideal version of that. And so to me, when Lafayette was lost, of course, Alabama not just took a piece of Lafayette and made it into who she was, but all of her. She said, I'm going to take him into me and become him." And that was the idea for me, was that it was not just the way that some of us choose to honor people we've lost. It's that, but blown out to the biggest possible way.
Yeah, I'm so excited for the next chapter on that. Uh,
We're working on it. We just we have a few issues done, but we're trying to finish all of it so that we can put it all out at once. So there's no delays anymore. We're going to do one big delay instead of a lot of little delays. So we're hard at work at it, I promise, and we're hoping by the end of the year it'll start coming out because I said to Tyler, I said I think the last issue I wrote, I said I think it's the best issue I've ever written, and then he turned it in. He was like, it's definitely the best issue I've ever drawn. So we're like very excited about it, getting it out and people seeing it.
that's a good tease.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And like congratulations on Spawn. I'm also kind of excited about that because I was never really a Spawn reader, but I am
Sure.
a Matthew Rosenberg reader.
Oh,
And I had the same process with you with Wildcats. I couldn't care
uh,
less about any of the characters, but then I kind of fell in love with them
oh,
career books.
well, thank
It
you.
it spawned something like can like people that don't care about Spawn like jump in and read.
Oh, for sure. I love Spawn. I'm a big Spawn fan, have been my whole life. The um, I think the beauty of Spawn is that it's not a book that's had a ton of shakeups and changes. Todd McFarlane has always been there in a big way, overseeing everything, and he still is. Um, but so it's very much a single story. Like it's 375 issues right now of this story of this character, and there's branches and things. But I know that's very intimidating to people. It's people expect a new number one, and people expect like, well, how do I start this? And for me, what I said to Todd when I started the book, I said, look, I want this to be my vision. I want longtime Spawn fans, people who've read every issue, every miniseries, to be excited because they're getting something they've never seen before. But I also want it to be that people who've never even heard of Spawn can buy the book and understand it and fall in love with him, and that makes them go back and read from issue one. I want people to go and say, "Oh, there's these seven phone book sized compendiums that I can go and read and get hundreds and hundreds of issues of this book because I really like it." So yes, it's 100% designed to be. It's not a. It's we didn't start a new continuity. It's not a retcon. It's not the absolute universe of Spawn. It's not the ultimate. But what we are doing is um, from issue 375 to when I start in Spawn 376 and King Spawn 55, there's a 1 year time jump. So something happened in a year. We don't explain exactly what. Spawn is missing. And then we follow all new characters you've never seen before. There's new villains, there's new protagonists, there's a whole new cast. So you don't need to know anything because it doesn't matter if you've read every Spawn book ever or no Spawn books. You're going in with the same amount of knowledge. Nobody knows what's going on, and we're going to explain it as we go. Um, Obviously, some of it as we go is going to start referencing older stuff, but we're going to do that slowly and gradually so people understand it in a way. But yes, it's completely new reader friendly on purpose. If you know there's a guy named Spawn, you're good. You can pick up the book and understand it.
Excited for that as well. Because my first contact with you was Multiple Man, and
Oh,
I
sure.
want to bring that book up because I think it's such a love letter to Peter's David X Factor in a way,
Oh, yeah.
but you also like give yourself the liberty to doing your stuff with the character.
Mhm.
And in those like big books with big IPs, how do you manage like respecting the vision that came before and kind of like having the freedom to do your own stuff?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Peter David's X Factor, for anyone who hasn't read it, is one of the five best Marvel comic runs of all
For
time.
sure.
Easily. Easily.
Number one for me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely make the case that it's number one for me too. It is the best. It's a cast of amazing characters that he just makes you fall in love with all of them, and it's one of my favorite comics. And so I wanted to do something that definitely took some of those pieces and ran with them and spoke to them and paid tribute to them and hopefully in the same way that I was talking about Spawn, like make people go back and be like, well, I want to see more of these characters and go by Peter David's X Factor. But I also know that I love Peter David's X Factor because he was willing to change things drastically. And if you do it from a place of love, and if you do it from a place of respect for the characters and the creators who worked on them, the change is good. It'll be good. If you don't, and you see it all the time, you see creators who don't really care about a character come in and change things, and you can feel it. You understand that it's like, well, they didn't really like this stuff. But if they do care about it, these characters are meant to be versatile. They're meant to be very in difficult situations. They're meant to be challenged. They're meant to be doing the unexpected. And I think that's definitely the spirit of Peter David's run on X Factor. He's taking a bunch of C-list and D-list X-Men and making them private investigators and making it into a soap opera and doing all these things that you don't expect. And so I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to take his version of the characters and do something you don't expect with them because I think that's very much in the spirit of what he did. And so the Multiple Man book, which was me and Andy McDonald, who makes If Destruction Be Our Lot with me. Yeah, we just wanted to do something with Multiple Man that people hadn't done, that you hadn't seen, that felt weird and new and funny. And it's funny, the book didn't sell well, but so many people come up to me and are like, I love that book so much. And that's always a nice feeling. Personally, I would rather have a book that doesn't sell great but means a lot to the people who read it than a book that does sell well and doesn't mean that much to people. I mean, I'd rather have a book that sells well and means a lot to people, but if I had to choose one of those two, I'd always rather people really care about something I make, even if it's fewer people. And so that is one of those books that I feel like it it did that very well.
Yeah, you talk about Andy. I think this new book is such a hard challenge because it's all robots. How do you make them like distinct enough? How you don't make that world look like just the same, like, too robotic, too like something
Yeah.
we can connect. How was the writing on that? How was the communication on that?
Uh, um, Andy is such a um he's such an amazing collaborator and such a crazy genius. I knew early on when we were coming up with the book, when me and my brother were working on it, that I was like, this has to go to Andy because there's so many things we want to do in this book that if I asked other artists to do, they would hang up the phone on me. But like an early example was I said to him, I was like, well, the book, it's just robots and then the Abraham Lincoln robot, and he doesn't look like any of the robots. And Andy said, well, what do the other robots look like? And I paused on the phone and I said, well, they all look different. Every single one of them is going to look different. And I think I basically said to him on the phone, you're going to design 600 characters, 1,000 different characters that all have to feel unique and like a real working thing. And Andy was just like awesome on the phone. He just went, "Oh, that's awesome," and it's just how his brain works. And so, ideally, this book works exactly the way I hoped it would. In that, I have these crazy ideas that I don't fully understand, and we can bring them to Andy, and he can make us understand them, but also make them better. So, yeah, he's built this world that is very unique, and it feels familiar. It feels like our world, but it also is different. It's a world without humans, and everything you see is basically a robot in it. Everything you see is like a character, has the chance to be talking to Abe and interacting with the other robots. And so um, there's a very fun energy to the book and a fun energy to making it because we're always challenging Andy to come up with new things, and then he's bringing us back things that are so cool that it changes how we feel about them, and we're changing scripts and rewriting characters because of his designs. So it's a really great collaboration.
Yeah, I think you guys accomplished something great. I hope
Thanks.
people pick up and that can be the success and also like the book that means a lot to people as well. I think.
I I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, just one last question. We talk about when my coworkers knew that I was interviewing you. I think the thing people talked to me about the most was, oh, that guy really do really sad endings, like really uncomfortable endings, and
Hmm.
they always all your books kind of like broke people hearts in a good way.
Hmm.
Um, how important is that to you? Is it's just a subversion of expectation, or I'm curious of like where does that come from?
Um, it's a hard question. It's a good question. I don't set out to make every book sad. Um, I like a lot of stories that end sad. So I think I gravitate towards that, but also I always think about the ending and what we're trying to say, and also, you know, we weigh when we make the book, like, well, what's the happy version of this? What's the sad version? And we sit there and say, well, which is better? Which is saying the thing we want to say more? Which is going to make people feel something more? Which is going to have more impact? And so sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're sad. I will say that I'm working on a different book that had a sad ending, and we worked really hard to get to the sad ending, and then we realized that there was a happy ending version that we liked more, and so it changed. And there's another book that I work on that I think people are going to be surprised has a really happy, positive, beautiful ending that actually. When we figured out what the end was, I got very emotional because I was like, it's very sweet and uplifting and much nicer. Um, but yeah, I'm okay if people think of me and think of me as the sad ending guy. Some of my favorite stories have sad endings, and I think there's something beautiful about interacting with a piece of art and it making you feel anything. And so if I can make people feel sad and that's nice. That's a nice feeling to. I think it's important to feel sad. I think it's a key part of being human. I think it's a key part of having empathy is caring about things and understanding that those things can you can lose those things or those things can hurt you. I think doing that regularly makes you a better person. And so I'm okay with the sad endings.
Yeah, and I think they arrived there in a good way. The last panel of For Kids kind of reminds me of the last shot in The Graduate, you know.
Oh wow,
Like
yeah.
like everything is right there. It's sad, it's happy, but like
That's
you can feel all the intensity in just one shot.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's very kind of you to say. It was one of my favorite movies. So, yeah, I think that we're never making people sad. We're never setting out to make people sad by just doing mean things. We're always doing it because we love the characters and we love the story and we think it's the right thing to do for the story.
and excited for the movie. I think Liam Neeson is such an incredible casting there.
Oh yeah, I'm Liam is amazing in it. Like it's I was excited when they cast him, and then seeing him act, I was like, oh my God, it's so much better than I even thought. He's one of the greatest living actors, so it's an honor, obviously.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talking with me, man. It really means a lot to me.
Oh no,
And
thank you.
I am actually a really big fan of your book, so
I
this
appreciate it.
was really fun.
I really appreciate it. This was great. Yeah, this was great to talk.